Right. So welcome again to Cannon for the channel for Arsenal fans all over the world. And we've invited the live stream last today, and we're so happy to have James Rowe all the way out there in the Netherlands.
Good evening,
So,
everyone. How are you all?
James, how's it going?
Very well. It's been a great day. I've had a wonderful day. I was on Talksport 2 earlier discussing the Netherlands match against Germany tonight. I managed to get my ticket for Arsenal Chelsea in January, and I can give Cannon for the fans a little bit of a breaking news. As you know, I interview professional players and managers, and I've just received confirmation that I will interview the current manager of Ferencváros and former Dynamo Kiev player and Tottenham player as well, and Ukrainian international Sergei Revrov. So very much looking forward to that in the next couple of weeks.
So congratulations on that, James.
Thank you very much.
Well done on that. So as you know, I've been putting out some promos and some bits and pieces. I'm going to switch it up a little bit. We're not going to talk about Arsenal. We're going to talk about who we consider to be the greatest Dutch Arsenal player. Also, we're going to talk about why Holland, in my personal point of view, are the greatest footballing nation never to have won the World Cup. I mean, they've come close once or maybe twice, but James is going to correct me on that. But those are a couple of things we're going to talk about. And also we're going to talk about Dennis Bergkamp. But before we get into that, I want to just go over some stats. And if you thought Dennis Bergkamp was the first Dutch player to play for Arsenal, you would be wrong. So I've delved in some depth, done some research, and the first Dutch player to ever play in the English league was someone called Gerrit Keizer. Now, James, is that pronunciation, is that correct? Gerrit?
The correct pronunciation would be Gerrit Keizer, but that's obviously with the hard G that we pronounce here in the Netherlands. But that's a very good attempt, I must say.
Thank you very much. So apparently, yeah, he signed for Arsenal back not long ago, 1930.
Goodness,
1930. And he survived one season. He was a goalkeeper.
Yeah, he was.
And he was signed by Herbert Chapman. Apparently, he played for Margate. He came over to England. He wanted to improve his English. He played for Margate. And apparently, Margate back in the day was a nursery team that kind of fed players into Arsenal. So Herbert Chapman saw Keizer play, signed him. He only played 12 games apparently for the Arsenal. And yeah, so he's the first Dutch player to have played for Arsenal. Now, James, I just pulled out just some stats here, and I hope they're kind of correct. So since the Premier League started, we have had in total 128 Dutch players play. 37 Dutch players currently play or feature in the Premier League. And James, there are no Dutch players who play in or feature in the current Arsenal squad.
That's a bit of a shame, but you never know with the green shoots of the Dutch national team at this precise moment in time. We could have one or two in the future. Who knows?
Yeah, but only time will tell.
Only time.
So yeah, we did put it out there. Literally, who did we consider to be the greatest Dutch Arsenal player? And we did a short poll on the channel. And James, lo and behold, Dennis Bergkamp featured quite a few times.
Yeah.
So I imagine you think he's the greatest. Yeah?
Yeah.
Why did you say that?
In my opinion, I think he's the greatest Arsenal player I've ever seen. I mean, when I used to go to Arsenal in my late teens, and he would play alongside Henry, and you watch him play, it was as if he had more time on the ball than anybody else, more patience than anybody else, and the timing of his runs and the timing of the weight of the passes. I don't know if any of the Cannon Fodder listeners and YouTube fans have read Dennis Bergkamp's autobiography, because it is extremely, extremely good. Not many people might not know this, but before he broke in at Ajax, he was training to be a physiotherapist. And he was doing all his training to become a physiotherapist, and then his parents were making it quite clear that he has to do his studies and has to get has to get his trade, if you like, and he was extremely polished and confident in getting them, and he tried his best, and I think he was making progress. But he was just so good that the great young Cruyff would spotted him at the tender age of 17 and had him playing in games and in tournaments. And I think they were playing Malmo. Ajax were playing Malmo, and I think Bergkamp was still at school and still had his studies, but would take the boat from I think it was the Netherlands to Sweden, something along those lines, to play the away leg in Malmo. And I mean, he's just loved here at Ajax as what he was at Arsenal. You know, he's just such a tremendous
Yeah.
player. And to think Arsenal paid £7.5 million for him, he leads very much a quiet life now. You really don't hear much of him. I mean, he was in the backroom staff at Ajax when they reached the underpaid the boss when they reached the Europa League final, and took specific joy in training the young strikers. But yeah, he's just very much keeps himself to himself. But what a tremendous player, and I feel privileged to have watched him play for Arsenal live on many occasions in the past.
But wasn't he the assistant manager for Holland last year? Just
He
or
he
maybe
was he was more he often stated that he wanted to in the beginning when he first was doing his coaching badges, that he was more than happy to help the younger strikers at Ajax blossom. And you imagine being 12, 13, 14 years of age and having someone like that tell you how to control the ball, how to shape your body, how to try to put the ball in the back of the net. I think he wanted at club level, and he has a big heart for Ajax Amsterdam. It's as big as the one he has for Arsenal, and he loves both clubs ever so much. And I think with the national team, there was overtures as to whether he would be interested, but he's just so relaxed and just so calm that I think he was just extremely content to do his bit for Ajax and to help Ajax. And then they changed course with the new manager and new way of thinking, and Bergkamp decided to leave of his own accord, really.
Hmm. But James, do you think he was a big risk? I mean, the time when Bruce Rioch signed him. I mean, I know he had come from Inter and he spent a couple of years at Inter. But do you think he was a big risk because he didn't set the world ablaze when he was playing for Inter Milan, the Inter Milan team there? So do you think was he a risk for Bruce Rioch at that time?
You could say for Rioch, but in terms of his ability, no. I mean, Bergkamp made it quite clear, but he found the press intrusion in Inter far too much. That the press would be at the training ground, outside his house, in the city of Milan, and he very much likes the quiet life. And I think he wanted to get away from Inter at the first given opportunity, and to play 11 years at Arsenal and to give your all for the shirt. I mean, I still find it incomprehensible the way the man did not feature in our only Champions League final appearance, but I can only put that down to tactics. I mean, if you think Henrik Larsson changed that game for Barcelona, if we'd have been a little bit
Mm,
proactive in putting our best player on the pitch, we may very well would have been the first London team to win the Champions League. Who knows?
yeah, yeah. Okay, so there are a few other Dutch players who have featured in the Arsenal team over the years. Mark Overmars and RVP, Glenn Helder. Uh, um, what about Mercy? He comes a close second to being one of the greatest Dutch players ever to play for Arsenal, or do you think it's probably more Mark Overmars? Who do you think featured
Um,
probably?
I think for it's a very difficult question. I think if you look at the what Overmars did for the club in helping with the '98 double, he's now, by the way, sporting director of Ajax, and he really enjoys
Yeah.
the role of sporting director with the transfers, with making sure that the youth side he works in conjunction with Edwin van der Sar as well. They have them in the backroom set up here at Ajax and at the board level. But I just think in terms of natural talent and lethal finishing, I mean, Arsenal signed Robin van Persie, I think, for about £2.5 million. And to get a striker who, even now in his final year as a professional, is still making a huge difference for Feyenoord, helping the youth players come along. I mean, I still remember his volley against Everton in the 2011, 2012 campaign, where both feet were off the floor when he struck that ball, and his wonderful goal against Charlton as well, which I think was went on to be goal of the season. I think he also as well, what fans might not know is when Van Persie was an Arsenal player, when he would go to international duty, he would be chastised by the Dutch journalists and the Dutch press, and they would try to chastise him about he hasn't won anything of note. And he would often tell them they haven't done their homework because he's quite clearly won the UEFA Cup with Feyenoord in 2003 and a couple of Super Cups. And they were always trying to dig that he's never won a league and he's never won never won an FA Cup and never won it, only won an FA Cup and hasn't won anything of note. But I think his departure, acrimonious departure from Arsenal, had more to do with the fact that he wasn't getting any younger, and that he wanted to move to try to win, so that when he looks back on his career, he's got something to show for it. I think more needs to be said about the fact that he was allowed to go to Manchester United, because there were rumours this end that Juventus were strongly linked. And he, I don't have any ill feeling towards him at all. I mean, he's quite clearly one of the greatest ever finishers to ever play for Arsenal. And you've got to remember as well, he scored over 100 goals for the club, and in a much maligned injury season where he was very, very, appeared in some cases, Alex, that he was made of glass with his injuries. But, when he made a difference, he really did make a difference. And, I think in terms of just lethal finishing and being able to put the ball in the back end, I would put Robin Van Persie as the second, but that's just my personal opinion.
Yeah, and would you say third would be Mark Overmars?
Yeah, I mean, he was very much, I say, a late bloomer. He played for Willem II and Go Ahead Eagles and finished his career at Go Ahead Eagles as well, because he's originally from the town of Deventer. He was just so quick and just so intelligent as well with making runs off the ball. And I think, to be a huge part of the Ajax team, which won in 95, had an average age of only, I think, 20, 22, 23 years old. And they were crowned as champions of Europe with the likes of Seedorf and Edgar Davids and Lippmann and Patrick Kluivert. And they were managed by a Van Gaal that was so in his element. Van Gaal is many things, but he's also an Ajax fan. And for him to be an Ajax fan and manage Ajax the way he wanted to, I mean, people still talk about the success of Vienna 1995 for Ajax even now, and we're almost 25 years on, so it's still evident here. And it's just I think Overmars can look back on a fine career.
Yeah. I just got a couple of comments here in the chat from another regular subscriber who puts comments on the channel, Paul Smith, and he says that RVP, no, he was a good player, but what he did to us, and I think what Paul is alluding to is the fact that we stuck by Robin Van Persie for all those years when he was injured, and excuse me, and then he went to the old enemy, who is Manchester United. So, do you think he had a lot of say in which team that you think he was told, no, you're going to Man United, and that is it?
No, that is exactly what I believe, Alex. That is exactly what I believe. Having had the ability to understand, I have the ability to understand him in his mother tongue. So when he would go on international duty and he would be chastised, and people would say to him, what about this? What about that? He would try to be as not coy, but also, he was always, I can always say this with an awful lot of backup as well, Alex, when he would address the Dutch media and he would speak about Arsenal, he would always speak about Arsenal with respect, always. I never saw one interview that he gave when he was away on international duty where he downplayed Arsenal or he disrespected Arsenal. I think he was told, you can go to Manchester United. And I think because of the age he was and that he wanted to win, I think that's the decision he took. I think if there was other offers on the table, it could have been different. But also as well, when finals won the Dutch Cup and he was decisive in scoring the goals for final to win their most recent Dutch Cup. He was as happy then winning that Dutch Cup as what he was when winning a Premier League title in terms of in terms of jubilation. So I can
Mm.
understand many Arsenal fans' gripes. I can understand their points, and I fully respect them as well. But from my point of view, I just think that he was told this is your option should you wish to take it. I have more of a gripe personally the fact that he was allowed to go to a major rival domestically. I think
Yeah.
if there'd have been a much more proactive way of dealing with contracts and signing people up long term. I mean, you see now Arsenal are still struggling with that, and the only thing that the club can do is try to reassess going forward in terms of a length of contract offered and also wages offered.
Mm. So no, just going a little bit off track. Do you think we'll ever see, or at least under Unai Emery, that we will sell our best players in inverted commas to our rivals? I mean,
No,
you know,
no, no, I don't. I
no.
don't think so. I really don't. I think Emery is cut from a completely different cloth. If you go back to his transfer dealings in Spain and in France as well, he he knows what he wants. He's come from outside. He's signed for 2 years. He's made a tremendous, tremendous start. I know we've had 4 draws where people have gone a little bit over the top, but obviously, everyone's entitled to their own opinion. But I can't see Unai Emery entertaining the notion of selling one of his best players to a major rival. I think he's come to Arsenal to win. Everything is extremely fresh at the club at the moment. We're going into a busy Christmas period, but I could never
Mhm.
see that happening under Unai Emery. No, I just think Wenger had, although he was a tremendous manager, I think he just had too much power and too much say. And when you get to that point, Alex, you can basically do what you want. Like, for example, for Wenger to sit on the board that appointed either Ivan Gazidis. In what organisation, in what world does such things take place? And I just think he got far too comfortable. And I think as well for him to say afterwards that maybe he stayed for too long and turned down this one and turned down that one. I can imagine it must take a lot of courage to say no to your dream job. I mean, he's turned down France on X amount of occasions, he's turned down Paris Saint-Germain on X amount of occasions, which surprised me personally because he's always been talking about the potential that Paris has as a city and a melting pot of football talent. But yeah, I just think we were at a stage where we needed to sell our best players. He's looking at the constraints he had, and yeah, I think he took that decision. But I also pleased Alex the way that he stated in hindsight, if someone says to him, you'd have to do it all over again, that he would say, no, thank you, let somebody else do it.
Yeah. All right. And just going back into the chat, there's another comment from Paul again, and he's saying that didn't Manchester City try to buy RVP? I mean, I don't recall whether Man City tried to come in and buy him. Was that the case, James? I don't remember
No,
with the
the
Man.
only concrete bid in terms of a concrete solid offer was from Manchester United, and as far as I'm aware, it
Yeah.
was negotiated by Ferguson and Wenger. And we also have to remember that there's not many people that go on to score 100 goals for Arsenal. I mean, Olivier Giroud also scored over 100 goals for Arsenal. He's now playing for Chelsea. I plan to give Giroud a good reception when he
Yeah.
returns to the Emirates in January because he played a huge part in Arsenal's recent success. And to think as well, we only signed him for 12 million euros from Montpellier.
Yeah. Incredible. Absolutely incredible. But just going back again, there's one more question here. It's a little bit off track. Again, coming from Paul Smith, and he's
I thought,
asking you, do you think Arsenal will win something this year? I think we've covered this
yes,
topic before. Yeah,
Paul,
I think you believe
Paul,
that.
I'm extremely confident, not overconfident, but considering we have, okay, we're officially in 4 competitions, but it's highly unlikely we're going to win one of them due to the strength of Manchester City and Chelsea. But I can see us winning one of the cups. I I think if you said to me which is the most realistic one, I think it's the League Cup because if we beat Spurs in December, we're in the semi-finals. The FA Cup, we have a tremendous pedigree in that, but I would so dearly love for Arsenal to win their first European trophy for 25 years. I mean, that was such a special night in Copenhagen, which only a select few now of Arsenal fans actually remember. And
Yeah, yeah,
you think, and I think to myself when I was a young boy, that final, but also the excitement of the previous rounds. You know, playing Odense and Standard Liège and running down the stairs on it was back then a Wednesday night and winning 7-0 in Liège and thinking this doesn't happen very often, and we beat them at home as well, and then we had to play Auxerre as well and Odense from Denmark, and it was a real good run, and then we come up against Parma, which is akin to coming up against like a
oh,
Barcelona now. I mean, they had Nevio Scala, who's bags of experience as a manager, and Brolin and Zola and
mm,
Asprilla,
and,
and the Arsenal way, in the George Graham way, we won it, and it was just such a special time. And I just hope for the new generation that we can give them something to think about and something to celebrate in that respect.
yeah. Okay, so there's just something else that came into my mind over the last couple of days, and I was thinking, which two Dutch players would I have loved to have seen play in the Premier League? And the two players who I thought of, James, was definitely Johan Cruyff. I would have loved to have seen the Dutch master play in the Premiership,
Yeah,
in inverted commas, total football. And the other player who I would love to have seen play in the Premiership would have been Marco
Van
van
Basten.
Basten. Yes. So I don't know. What about you? Which players, Dutch players, would you have loved to have seen play in the Premier League?
Well, I think as someone who can appreciate a good defender, I think Ruud Krol would have had a lot to say in the defensive nature. And you've obviously picked the two very, very famous ones. I think Johan Neeskens is very much underrated. He
Yes.
he's often referred to as the second Johan, but he had a fine career with Ajax, with Barcelona, and with Valencia as well. And I was fortunate enough to interview his son-in-law, Ricky van Wolfswinkel, who used to play for Norwich and now currently plays for Basel. I spoke to Ricky back in January, and I asked him about his. Did he receive any special advice from his father-in-law, who had a tremendous career? And he said that Johan Neeskens told him to enjoy every single moment and to enjoy
Mm,
every single moment of being a professional footballer because the career goes by like lightning. And I think Neeskens, as I say, is often referred to as the second Johan, but he had a fine career. And not many people might not know, Alex. It's nice to give
mhm.
different opinions about on different facts and figures about players. Obviously, when Cruyff was at Ajax and they won 3 Champions Leagues, European Cups in a row, there was such togetherness in that team that hardly anybody left. They were all not just great players; they were all locally from Amsterdam. They were also all friends. And I know
Mm,
as well that when Van Basten, obviously, he's heavily well known for his time at AC Milan, but there was
yes.
a time when it was unsure, and Cruyff was manager of Barcelona, and he tried to get Van Basten to go to Barcelona, but Van Basten was just too happy with where he was. But he was also suffering many many injuries. I mean, the extent of his injuries, especially with his knee and the operations he went under, were unbelievable, really. So it could have been in
Mhm.
a different world. You could have very well had Van Basten signing for Barcelona if things would have been a little bit different.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to take a quick pause. And James, as whenever I do a live stream, I like to have like a quick and small competition. Again, there's no prizes. It's just the competition just for the sake of doing the competition. So the question is, how many games did it take Dennis Bergkamp to score his first goal? So I repeat, how many games did it take Dennis Bergkamp to score his first goal for Arsenal. Again, we've got some people who are in the chat. So, guys, if you want to enter the competition, again, there's no prizes. It's just for the fun of doing it, and we'll mention it at the end of the live stream. Now, guys, remember it's only a short live stream. I like to keep it maximum 30 or 35 minutes. So, if you've got any questions for James, put them in the chat, and I'll try and get them over to James as soon as I can. And furthermore, remember to follow James on his Twitter account. James, if you want to know anything about Dutch football or European football, James Rowe NL is your man. I think I put the link in the box below.
Thank you very much, Alex. Really lovely. Thank you
No
for
problem.
the words, and thanks to for the interest.
No problem. Right. So just following on, I know, again, it's only a short show and there's only so much we can put in the half hour, James. But I did say to you, I wanted to know, why is it Holland, of all teams, are, in my opinion, again, the greatest footballing nation never to have won the World Cup? And again, I know they came close in 1974 when they played West Germany.
78.
And they lost 2-1. But why is it they're the greatest nation never to have won the World Cup, James?
Well, in the case of, if I can just go back to the 3 times that they were in the final and give 3 separate examples as to how things went. They went 1-0 up in the final in 74, and obviously they were playing the arch enemy in Germany. And the famous midfielder Willem van Hanegem, he said that they didn't just want to beat Germany, they wanted to toy with them. They wanted to embarrass them. They didn't really have them. They didn't really have. I mean, they're all mature players, but they were so pumped up at that being, with the events in the recent past and how some people have suffered. They wanted not just to win, but also to embarrass the opponent. And in that second half, they kind of forgot themselves a little bit, and Germany came back in it to win 2-1. 4 years later, without Johan Cruyff, they reached the final against Argentina. But obviously, with playing a team in Buenos Aires, the home nation, and Mario Kempes as well scoring, there were certain opinions that if they was to win that game, at the risk of sounding being a little bit too over dramatic, there were some players fearing for their lives. Would they get out alive? How would things be? I think Argentina were under a dictatorship at that time, so I think there was a bit of uneasiness regarding that final in getting over the line. I think the best chance they had was in 2010, the most recent World Cup final. That one was a tremendous run. They looked so solid. There was winners there. There was a real team ethic there. And they were doing really, really well. And then they got to the final, Alex. And then because they were playing Spain, their psyche kind of changed, where they thought to themselves, to stop Spain, you have to kick Spain. And so rather than play their own game in that final, they decided to physically try to match Spain. And with how nimble players are, with how quick players are, they just kind of forgot themselves a little bit. And it's a real shame, because for me 2010 was I say now or never moment. But 4 years later in Brazil, they came quite close, reaching the semi-finals, getting knocked out on penalties by Argentina. But for me, 2010 was the best chance that I think, will ever have. And then to do all the hard work to beat a very, very good Uruguay side, and then change the psyche and the ethos in the final because you're playing Spain. For me, that is a bit of a shame, really. I often wonder if they had been playing Germany, which a lot of people wanted, even though Germany lost to Spain in the other semi-final. I often wonder how different things might have been.
Yeah. Again, I love the Dutch style, football, total football. But yeah, I mean, when I look at the players and even the managers, that Holland have had over the years, it's a slight enigma for me that they've still not won, the World Cup. But time.
Time
Yeah,
time will
time.
tell. They have Ronald Koeman in charge now. They've recently beat the
Yeah.
last two world champions in their previous results. If they gain a point tonight in Germany, they will go on to reach the Nations League semi-finals. It just goes to
Hmm.
show how quickly things can change. There's an excellent spine coming through. In particular, I'd like to talk about three players very quickly, Alex, that will go on to have absolute stellar careers. The first one is Matthijs de Ligt, who Arsenal have been linked with as a centre half. He's currently 19 years old, but he's captain of Ajax. And some might say, oh, he's 19, he's very young. But when you hear him speak, Alex, it's as if a man of 30 is speaking. And when I watch him
Hmm.
play, when I watch him play regularly, I've watched him regularly since he made his debut. He has no qualms whatsoever about telling his fellow defenders where to stand in terms of observation, in terms of communication. So I think he'll go on to have a stellar career. Another player is the midfielder Frenkie de Jong, who's been linked with Manchester City and Barcelona in recent days. But I think the link to Barcelona, along with De Ligt, is more because the Dutch media, they like the link of Ajax Barcelona and they want to kind of push it through. But the difference is in this case with De Jong and De Ligt, Alex, is they're both not just excellent players, but they're also very, very intelligent young men. And
Hmm.
I think they'll go on to make the right decision for themselves. And one of the real finds of the recent qualifiers is a player called Denzel Dumfries. He's the right back of PSV, and he's currently recently broken into the international side, and he's going to nail on the right back place, Alex, because he came up through the traditional route of when Sparta Rotterdam got promoted. He started out at Sparta in the Eredivisie, went on to sign for Heerenveen and then signed for PSV last summer. He's physically very well built, very strong, very athletic. And I think with those three players in particular, there's a real core coming through of good players for the future. It's just they just have to refine. Excuse me. They just have to refine the striker role. I mean, Depay is very much a number 10, kind of in and out winger. They just need to refine the striker role before Euro 2020 because that will come back to bite them. Should they not define that role and get that sorted, in my opinion.
Yeah. Okay, just getting back into the chat. I've got Ryan. You know Ryan quite well, Mr. Arsenal 89 podcast, and he has a question for you, James. And he says, uh, uh, can can Holland actually win the Nations League and build on that to compete in the next Euros and World Cup?
I believe so.
So
It's not impossible, but if you look at if should they gain a point tonight, and I assume they will, I believe they will. I don't know if it's confirmed as to who they'll play in the semi-finals. I'm not sure. So once the semi-final draw is made,
yeah,
they beat Portugal in a friendly in Geneva. And quite recently they beat them 3-0 and De Ligt basically kept Ronaldo very quiet. Although that game was played on neutral territory, which kind of took it away from me a little bit. Obviously, England beat them in Amsterdam back in March on the first night nerves of Ronald Koeman's reign. And then obviously Switzerland are very much a dark horse in this respect. But for me, I'd have to know who they may well play. But it will give them an awful lot of confidence going forward. I mean, Koeman, with his disappointments of Southampton and Everton, he really wanted this job. He half expected to get it back in 2014, and the Dutch FA plumped for Guus Hiddink, and Koeman went on his way. But one very interesting thing about when Koeman signed back in February as the Dutch national team manager, Alex, is he stated that he signed a contract through to Qatar 2022. And come hell or high water, he's happy to see out his contract at the very least, because he was asked by the Dutch media, should a Barcelona come in, should another club come in, will you be leaving? And he said no. He said, I've wanted this job for such a long time. And I think he's a little bit disappointed with how things went at Everton and Southampton, but he's just so
mm,
comfortable now, and he's just so happy to have the best job in Dutch football. I mean, he's got it. He got it 4 years too late, but at least he's got it now. And you see the shoots. There's still a long way to go. I mean, for fans to realise how bad it was behind the scenes when Danny Blind was appointed and Dick Advocaat, because they were Dutch board level members that didn't want to relinquish their positions, that wanted to stay in the position they were and put their own interests before that of the Dutch national team. And that's why you saw a kind of a downslide of results and performance, really.
But wasn't Frank Rijkaard a manager of Holland at one point?
He was, and he got them to a Euro 2000 semi-final, and he was very emotional in the bus after the match. He broke down in tears because he really wanted to win it. Yeah, but obviously now he's I think his last post was I believe Saudi Arabia. Frank Rijkaard also owns his own clothing company, so he's very busy with his jeans and being and having other options. And yeah, I can't see Rijkaard returning anytime soon. But if I can just give a note to the listeners and to the viewers, if you look at some of the clubs in the Dutch Eredivisie and also some of the Dutch managers abroad, there is some real talent there. There is some real talent there, and I'm sure as time goes on that will bear fruit, and you'll see. I mean, we see Marcel Keizer becoming manager of Sporting Lisbon. He's so highly thought of because of his work with the youth teams at Ajax and Cambuur Leeuwarden in the past. But Sporting have decided to take a chance on him. And Maurice Stijn at VVV on a shoestring budget. You know, they're up in the European playoffs. Erik ten Hag, Ajax, they're on the verge of the last 16. So there are some very, very good managers around. It's just, will they get the opportunity to further their careers at domestic and European level as well?
Okay, quickly back into the chat. Again, I've got another question from Ryan, and Ryan's asking you, even though I think we might have covered this already, is asking you, which are your top 4 Dutch Arsenal players of all times in order of the best? But I think we've covered this already, haven't we?
We have, but we can give a quick.
Well, yeah, all time.
Bergkamp number 1. For my personal opinion, Van Persie number 2. Overmars number.
Do you want to have a think about it?
I think for number 4. I think for number 4. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know. Glenn Helder had his moments. He's now a drummer and a percussionist in a band. You know, so he's keeping busy. But Glenn Helder often tells the story, Alex, of when he returned to pre-season training and obviously I think John Jensen had signed, I believe, and George Graham told Glenn Helder that you're not really going to get much playing time. So I think he went to Benfica, but he had some personal problems, Glenn Helder, which have been well documented here. I won't go into that now, but he's happy. He's happy and healthy now, and is often giving his opinion about football on as a studio analyst. And when he gets the opportunity to talk about his time at Arsenal, he'll always chuck it
in. Okay, right. Any other comments? I mean, there's lots of chats, but they're talking about the Premier League. I'm not interested in the Premier League for now. We're just talking about the greatest Dutch Arsenal player and Dutch football. So this evening, Germany are playing a game. What is your prediction for the match tonight, James?
My prediction is 1-1, Alex. I believe
1-1.
I believe that a point is all the Netherlands need. Germany will be playing for pride. It won't be easy. But Matthijs de Ligt spoke in the press conference about the players being speaking amongst themselves about beating the most recent world champions. But I think it's taken a lot out. Energy-wise, I think it's taken a lot out of them. So be very interesting to see what happens. But my prediction is 1-1.
Okay. All right. Right. So we have come to the end of this live stream. It's been very, very interesting. But before I wrap up, the competition. And the competition was, how many games did it take Dennis Nicolas Maria Bergkamp to score his first goal for Arsenal? It took him 8 games. 8 games. And he scored a brace. And it was against Southampton.
Yeah.
Southampton. and it was on the 23rd of September, 1995.
Goodness.
So there you go. I know some people have been putting 4 and 6 and 3, but it was 8 games. And at that time, I do remember those groanings in the
Oh,
stands,
yeah.
saying, "Oh, this player, he's not worth the money. Who is this player?" But yeah, club legend, a
Indeed,
club legend.
he's a. I mean, obviously, people will have their opinions. Obviously, I'm not just saying it because I'm here. I was also fortunate enough, Alex, finally to interview his nephew last August. His nephew Roland plays for used to play for Brighton. He's now playing for RKC Waalwijk here in the Netherlands, and he invited me to the stadium, and we had a bit of a chat. And we spoke about his uncle, and I asked him, did you receive any specific advice?" And he said, well, he didn't see him very often, but he became an Arsenal fan because obviously his uncle was playing there, and Roland would often say that for Bergkamp, you don't see him for 80 minutes, but he'll give a pass, or he'll score a goal, and then all of a sudden, things will start to click. But just an absolutely tremendous footballer, and yeah, absolutely delighted and privileged to have seen him play for my club.
Absolutely. All right, so this has been Cannon Fodder, fans, with James Rowe NL out there in the Netherlands. And again, I make sure you follow him on his Twitter account. But James, again, it's been a pleasure, an
You're more
absolute
than
pleasure
welcome.
to have
More than
you back
welcome.
on the show. I know you're very, very busy, and onwards and upwards.
Indeed,
I wish you all
I'll
the
keep
best.
you posted on a few. I'll keep you posted on a few things. It was nice to give some breaking news tonight about the upcoming Sergei Rebrov interview and a couple more, and obviously interviews coming thick and fast published by World Football Index. But fans can always keep updated on my Twitter handle at James Rowe NL. There'll always be a little hint as to who the next interview might be, and I try to give everyone's got a story to tell, Alex, and you try to sell it to the best of your ability. And sometimes you get some very big names, sometimes not so much, but everybody's got a story to tell, and it's nice to do that justice in that respect.
Absolutely fantastic. Thank you. So, guys, whoever came into the chat, I am absolutely grateful to everyone who came in the chat, contributed. Again, those who didn't win the competition, it's just the way it goes. Anyhow, this has been Cannon Fodder, the channel for Arsenal fans all over the world.
Goodbye,
And a
everybody.
lot of
Thanks for listening.
breaking news. Thanks, James. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.